Okay, I'm sitting here with Yamato Ken, the head coach of Team Rocket. Nice that you took your time. And we will discuss coaching in general and, of course, the new patch 5.13. So, as a coach, what do you actually do? How do you help your team, like in comparison to an analyst, for example?
I think the biggest difference is the effect a coach has to have on the mentality of the players. Usually in sports, and especially in esports, the players are very young and they're very fragile when it comes to emotions. So the coach's job is to keep that in place, so everything becomes as efficient as possible when it comes to progression of the team.
So, taking a look at the champion selection, for example, on stage, do you actively help the players and just give input on which champions they might consider playing, or is this more the job of the analyst?
I myself, I don't have any analysts at all. I do
Oh,
all
okay.
the work myself. I watch LCK, LPO, and NALCS and the ULCS, so I barely sleep. But when it comes to the ban and pick phase, I usually plan it 1 week ahead. We practice it and we make it like perfect to the end. Basically, we find out flaws. And what I do with the ban and pick phase is simply I plan out for every possible scenario. So like any possible bans, I'm prepared for it, and like the scenarios I've already planned out in my head, and most of them solve themselves. And usually, what I do in the ban and pick phase, I barely even talk about the picks, just what they're supposed to do with the picks in game.
Okay, nice to know. So going over to the new patch, we will see a lot of AP changes and as well a couple of changes to the jungle. Let's start with the Runeglyph patch. You know, we saw a lot of Diana and Israel rising in the mid lane. Do you think we will see more variations of those mid laners coming up?
I think the buff itself is massive, but I personally feel that there's a weakness with Diana having no ignite, and also with the AP Ezreal in general, because having Smite limits you to having, for example, a cleanse. So there's like picks like Twisted Fate, Annie is very good against Ezreal in general, and I personally feel like a pick like Ezreal is rather weak because it has almost no impact in the early game. You almost make the assumption that you're going to lose 25 minutes and then hope the enemy to make a mistake. But in terms of the jungle itself, I think, for example, Nidalee is going to be like a higher priority than it was before, and I can't really think of any other junglers that make use of it that well. Possibly, what I'm thinking is Fizz jungle, but I don't think I like it that much.
So with those AP changes and needlessly large rod being one of the bigger ones with the cost reduction, do you think that will have an impact on the competitive play?
I think the meta is barely going to change. Like if you think of like the AD champions are unaffected, I think they work simply because of what people play in top lane in Europe. We barely see the mid lane poke champions in other regions simply because people still weigh heavily towards what I like to call the golem champions, like a Maokai, Nautilus, or for example a Rumble, which are a lot strong versus these AD poke champions because they can itemize heavily armor and it's kind of rough to kill them in that regard. And with that in mind, like when it comes to the AP meta, I think the biggest change is the convenience. Usually when you base and want to buy like a big item, like a needlessly large rod, it's very hard to save up for 1600 gold and make like an efficient base. The 1250 change is actually massive in that regard. I think the convenience factor is big, and also the addition of the amplifying tomes on the CDR items. I think the variation of builds, I think we might see some different builds, but I think the core build will still be the classic Void Staff third with the death cap on second with the CDR item.
Okay, do you think, like, do you have a couple of champions in mind that actually profit really hard from this patch?
I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a lot of Orianna with Athenes into actual what's it called, the
Real life,
face,
Leandris.
the
Yeah.
burning face is what I call it. So I didn't want to say that in an interview, but now I did anyway. So who cares? And also with the burning face, I'm thinking Rumble is gonna do really good. I think the Zonia's change is also massive because you buy it for the utility, not the AP,
Yeah.
and the gold difference is really good for him. And the Raleigh change as well because his Flame Spitter is going to slow very hard. So I think Rumble is gonna be a power pick, Orianna, and also something that might come up is also the brand. I think
Okay.
Brand was good since before. He's just fragile in a way, but his damage numbers are really high. 2 seconds stun on the Q with a really low cooldown. I think the changes are really healthy for him.
Okay, yeah, we will find out. Thank you a lot for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And do you have any shout outs to all your fans out there who are rooting for Rocket?
Well, first of all, I would like to give a shout out to my family who always support me through everything, and it kind of feels good to always know someone has my back when things are grim. Also, a shout out to all the fans that always support us no matter how things go. It's always nice to read those nice messages, and also a big thank you to Roka, the organization, for providing us with everything we need, and also a big shout out to the players because they mean a lot to me.